Welcome everyone, my name's Dom, and as the title suggests, I recently picked up the iPhone 12 Pro Max. An iPhone 12 Pro Max, again with the awful name. The iPhone 11 12 Pro Max. I just picked up an iPhone 12 in cerulean or ocean blue, Pacific blue, that's what it's called. In Pacific blue. I recently did my complete review on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and you could find that video over here. I wanted to talk a little bit more about this phone because there's something really spectacular going on with this guy. So I thought, in the spirit of the channel, I'll do incomplete reviews. No, again, no, okay. All right, let's just go ahead and run the intro. So the iPhone 12 Pro Max, again, an awful name. I don't know what's been going on with electronics names lately, but getting into kind of what I want to talk about. I've had the phone now, I think, for a little over a week, and overall, it really isn't that much different from the iPhone 11 Pro Max. It's a little thinner, it's a little bigger. It comes in blue now, and all that stuff is fine. The performance is basically, as far as the hand feel goes, is basically the same as the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Now, battery life I haven't been able to fully test yet, so I'm going to really talk more about the battery life probably in the complete review of this phone, because the iPhone 11's battery life was just, it was spectacular. It was just excellent, and I know a lot of people agreed with me. A lot of the other reviewers that talked about that phone, they said the same thing. So far so good with the battery life for this phone. But what I really noticed when it came to this phone was all the subtle physical changes, right? So this phone is reminiscent of the iPhone 4 that was released by Apple back in 2010. Starting with the iPhone 6, which was released just a few years later, the iPhone started to take on this rounded shape, and it kind of felt natural in the hand. It was easy to hold, and it's basically maintained that shape all the way up until this phone. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super impressed with this phone as far as a transition from the 11 to the 12. It still has this horrendous camera bump, which is way worse as far as its size and its protrusion, and just how much space it takes up relative to the iPhone 11, which, it was big, but it was slim. This one's really sticking out, and it doesn't even really feel all that organized, which, I just don't like camera bumps. I don't. They just bother me. It almost makes me feel like I need to put a case on this phone, and putting a case on this phone is not something you're going to want to do. In the hand with the flat edges, it feels a little rough. I'm not going to lie. It does feel like you have a good grip on it, but the sharpness, day-to-day use, you're probably going to be fine. If you throw a case on it, chances are it's not going to be made out of metal. So it'll have softer, even if it has, cornered edges, they'll probably be slightly rounded. It's not even really just the fact that the phone, is flat on the sides. It's not even that the phone has a bigger screen. It's not even that the phone is thinner, which it is thinner, and it is pretty noticeable after a little bit if you've been used to using any of the previous iPhones, or at least the iPhone 11 Pro. What really is going on here with this phone is all of those little things together have really created an experience for me that, I'm not gonna lie, it feels kind of like the perfect balance of form factor when it comes to a phone. It's easy to hold, and with how flat this phone is, and the machining is just, the machining is just spectacular. I don't know how Apple did this. I don't know how they pulled it off, but this phone is it's flat. And it's really, really flat, and you can feel it. And it's nice because there's not that separation really between the antenna bands and the screen itself. It doesn't have like that, that offset where you can rub your fingernail on. You can feel it a little bit, but it's basically insignificant. And with the 6.7 inch screen to the 6.5 inch screen, again, it doesn't sound like much. And when you're holding it, it does feel bigger. I'm not gonna lie, this is a big phone. This thing has some size, and it's impressive. But like I was saying, with all those things put together, you get this feeling from it. I really feel like the content that I'm consuming, I mostly watch videos, YouTube videos and stuff, but even web pages, typing, just a lot of the little stuff that your day-to-day app experiences, they feel really, I don't know, they feel a hell of a lot more immersive than than any previous iPhone I've had. And it's not just, again, it's not just about the bigger screen. It's all the things combined. It's the way that you hold the phone, the way that it, it fits in your hand, the way that you can hold it horizontally. And it just feels like your fingers have a place to go on this phone, and they feel kind of locked in because of how flat they are. You don't have to really fight with the phone. You don't have to struggle with the phone. And it's nice. The thinness, it kind of sits between your fingers in such a way that, again, it feels locked in. And that has really made me quite curious about what Apple is going to do with this form factor. I mean, if they're going to keep this form factor for a while, and I hope they do, because it really is excellent. If you haven't held one yet, definitely go to a Best Buy, go to an Apple store, go to wherever, and hold this phone. It is quite lovely. Again, this camera bump is just kind of it's extraordinary, and not in the good way. But yeah, I mean, it's, there's really not, like, overall, there's really not that much change from the iPhone 11 Pro. It's just that form factor thing I was talking about. The screen is great. There's no ProMotion, which I don't even know how Apple continues to call this thing Pro. Yes, the Pro Max has a different sensor than the standard Pro for the camera, which, I haven't really seen better pictures. I've seen better video, and I'm gonna talk about that with this phone, but that probably has to do with the inclusion of HDR, which is really super cool. I can't necessarily say it still stands up to the standards of a traditional DSLR, but it is impressive what this thing can do. I really wish Apple would get rid of, or at least give you a setting to turn off all of the post-processing stuff and just give you just the straight image just right from the sensor. But maybe they need the post-processing to kind of give you those 4K resolutions, because if you're shooting in 4K, because the sensor itself can't actually do 4K. I don't know, right? I'm not the engineer that made this phone. But outside of all that, it's fine. The performance is good. The 5G is fine. That's what this little antenna here, this little like notch thing here on the side is. It kind of looks like a SIM card tray. So don't get confused. Don't try to stick your SIM removal tool in there if you swap phones. So I've been using 5G. I have AT&T, and I live in the United States, and I get 5G, but I don't get millimeter wave. I haven't gone out to look for millimeter wave yet. With the quarantine going on. So maybe at some point I will. But 5G is fine. I mean, it's fine. To be honest with you, I really don't think that the inclusion of 5G with this phone was, I think it was a way to add a little extra to this phone when they couldn't get ProMotion in, and they couldn't get a lot of the other things, smaller notch, possibly Touch ID back into the phone. I think the inclusion of 5G was kind of a way to get around that. And I think what they're doing right now is Apple is using the current set of circumstances, and possibly people not upgrading their phone as much, or I think, long story short, I think what they're really trying to do is they're beta testing this. That's what I think they're doing. I think they're going to try to get the NICs up, because I'm going to tell you, when you use 5G on this thing, especially if you're doing hotspot, even if you're doing it via USB and not using Wi-Fi hotspot tethering, right? You're just doing via USB. 5G makes this phone really warm, and that's not particularly an Apple thing to do. I have noticed with this phone gets warmer than any other iPhone I have ever used. I've actually got this phone, besides I got some of the 4K capabilities with this phone, and I found that this phone was getting so warm that, and I don't know if it had to do with the temperature or what, but I found this phone was getting so warm that the camera app was actually lagging. So again, I don't know what's going on there, but even if you charge this phone wirelessly, anything, this phone gets way warmer than the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And so I'm really hoping that, the battery can keep up as far as, longevity goes. Because the iPhone 11 Pro, I mean, even, I've had it for a year, and that battery still holds up. That battery was phenomenal all the way to the last day. I mean, I would go 3 days sometimes without having to charge that phone. And so, I really hope this phone can keep that going. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it's been a good phone. Again, for the little physical differences, that's what really matters when it comes to this phone. And again, once you have one and you kind of experience it, watch a couple movies. I ended up watching like 3 movies back to back on this thing. The HDR is really good. It gets a little too dark for some of the movies that I was watching on here that had HDR, and even if you max the brightness out and you're in a dark room, sometimes it feels like the screen, at least in those scenarios, got just a tad too dark, and it was kind of hard to tell, to kind of see what was going on. That wasn't really a common issue. 99% of the time, the footage was fine. YouTube has been fine. Now they included 4K with iOS 14, so that's been great. The pictures seem fine. The LiDAR sensor, so that's the other thing that got added with this phone, right? So the LiDAR sensor does seem to help with keeping this phone in focus, and it definitely has quite a significant impact on the accuracy of the whole bokeh effect, the portrait mode, right, where it blurs the background out, kind of like I have going on with my videos. So that has to do with like depth of field and stuff, but you can't really do that with a camera of a sensor that's this size. Plus, you need things in the lenses that are able to adjust aperture, and there's a bunch of little stuff to it that goes into creating a depth of field. So they simulate it using software, and the iPhone 11 did fine. This phone does really well. It does it fast. So the LiDAR sensor is really cool. I want to compare it to the Note 20's laser focus. I think that's going to be a really cool video, because keeping a video in focus, I mean, if you don't have your video in focus, like your footage is ruined. It is basically almost nearly impossible to recover from not having video in focus. So I do wish, with Apple making these Pro phones, as they would call it, which again, without promotion, I'm never going to consider this phone Pro. If Apple's going to continue to make Pro phones like this, what I would like to see is a suite of apps that can take advantage of this phone. Mostly the camera. If it's going to be all about cameras, you guys know how I feel about cameras when it comes to smartphones. I think there's way too much focus on cameras. You can check out my my You Don't Need a New Smartphone Right Now video on the channel, and kind of get some more of my thoughts on the current state of smartphones and my thoughts on that. But without a really high level slew of features and controls in the camera app to be able to control ISO, shutter speed, all this other stuff, I don't think that this phone, outside of lacking the ProMotion thing, outside of that, and that drives me crazy, because ProMotion is really, really good on the iPad, and they need to put it in the iPhone. But like I said, I want to see more Pro apps. So I would like to be able to control the different settings of the camera, go into, let's say, Pro mode, for those people who do want to use those settings. So I do feel like the iPhone, if it's going to be called Pro, I mean, it's an expensive phone, but I still think that people are just going to buy this thing just because it's bigger. And so I think Apple should also make a standard iPhone 12 Max that is cheaper and still has the bigger screen. I don't think that their biggest full feature phone should be just the biggest one, and people are going to get that, and they have all these features that really aren't they're really not using. In addition, if the phone's going to be called Pro, I would like to see more features. I would like to see a different processor in it than from the main phone. I mean, it seems like Apple's going to keep going down this path, and I welcome it, but I want to see a little bit more that makes this phone truly Pro, as well as the iPhone 11. I mean, mind you, the iPhone 11 is done now, but this is a MacBook Pro versus a standard MacBook or a MacBook Air. There's a lot of differences, mostly on the internals and the hardware. You can change up the software with this Apple and make, give more Pro features to really tap into this phone's potential. And like I said, you give people a reason, to be able to save a buck and not get this, and then make this phone more Pro. Add ProMotion, add a better processor, add USB Type-C. I know the rumor right now is that Apple wants to is talking about getting rid of the Lightning port on the phone. Keep a port on the Pro phone, but just make it USB Type-C. And you know what? Make it Thunderbolt too, so I can transfer footage off this thing at lightning speeds, because that would be really, really cool if I could just use this as my be-all, end-all camera. Again, if it's aimed for, I can understand using this phone and focusing a lot on the camera if this phone is aimed at Pro users, or so-called Pro users, I guess. And so, like, again, adding stuff like that, I think would really make the difference and really make this phone feel more Pro than it does now. Because I'm not gonna lie, there's really nothing about this phone that feels Pro, especially considering that there's not a cheaper version with the same size. So Again, they're probably never going to do that, but that's just some stuff I would like to see. And that about wraps this one up, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Definitely go check out my other complete reviews and some of my other videos. If you haven't subscribed, definitely be sure to subscribe. Hit that like button. Ask me, down below if you have any questions about this phone, anything you'd like to see it do, or if it has, or anything like that, or if you want to see side by side with other phones, whatever. Just go ahead and ask me, and I'll try to, I'll see what I can do. And as always, talk to you soon.